Wow, thanks to everybody. Would you please give a round of applause to the amazingly hardworking, brilliant staff from Nieman and IOP who are here today. Thank you to every single one of you. This couldn't have happened without you. And thank you so much to the participants. One of the thrills for me was just hearing in the questions all the newsrooms you've come from and how diverse it is geographically and by size and medium. Really an honor to be with you all today. So I just want to say a couple things. One is a lot of people were plugging books. I'm going to plug his book, Believer, if you haven't read it. And he didn't ask me to do this, and he doesn't know that I'm doing this, but now I do. Now you know. But before David was the David he is now, I knew him as a really, really talented political reporter back at the Chicago Tribune. And he may be the person here who is the greatest intersection between kind of the conversation we've been having today between people who sort of work on the political side and those who cover politics. And Believer is a really extraordinary book, actually, that will give you a lot of insight into what it's like to be both of those. So I really do recommend that book. I also wanted to say, I feel like we didn't give Chicago its due. We are, well, in this particular part of Chicago, I mean, a lot of you or some of you will come back to cover the convention. That'll be the 26th in the history of Chicago, the most of any city in the country, starting with Abraham Lincoln's nominating convention. So that alone is extraordinary history here. But if you get a minute, if you're not running to O'Hare or Midway as soon as this is over, walk up and down the Midway Plaisance and try, which is this grassy stretch between Jackson Park on the east and Washington Park on the west, designed by Frederick Law Olmsted, who New Yorkers think only designed Central Park, but no, he did this too. And picture, if you can, the Columbian Exposition, which took place in the White City and along the Midway Plaisance. The very first Ferris wheel, built by George Ferris, was right here on the Midway. Susan B. Anthony spoke there. Scott Joplin performed there. I mean, you're sitting in a really historic part of the city, and it's kind of extraordinary. And I hope you get Lynn mentioned the Obama Center, which is to the east, but walk up and down a little bit, and hopefully you'll appreciate the amazing place that this is. And the last thing I really wanted to say is John Harwood quoted Robert Caro when he, in his comments, quoted Caro talking about power. And I wanted to share two other Caro quotes. Bob was a 1966 Nieman Fellow, and we've gotten to know him really well at Nieman, and you all know how extraordinary he is. But he said a couple of other things about power that I think might be worth sharing as we get ready to say goodbye to each other and watch you all go off to cover this really important election. We once asked him to come to Harvard to speak about power in honor of the centennial of the Pulitzer Prize. And he told me he needed to think about whether he had something to say about it, and he'd call me back. So he took a few days, and he called me back. And he said, I've thought about it, and this is what I have to say about power, and I would like to come talk about this. And that is that I didn't learn to really write about power until I learned to write about the powerless. And I think that's something really important to keep in mind as we set out to cover elections. We often think in elections of sort of one part of that equation, but Caro, who of course wrote The Power Broker, the brilliance of that book is not what it tells us about Robert Moses only, it's about what it tells us about Robert Moses, what he did to people. And the other thing that, that Caro said, one other quote that I want to impart, which is not his quote, but it came from his editor at Newsday when he was a young reporter, and he reminds us of it all the time. And this was an editor who said to him, turn every page, turn every goddamn page. So that's really aspirational. It's hard to do that when you're in embed and you're running and you're working 20 hours a day and filing constantly. But I do think that kind of aspirational thing is something to keep in mind. So Good luck to you all out on the trail. Keep up with Nieman Reports and Nieman Lab, because we're going to be writing about you guys and what you're doing out there. And if you ever have any ideas for stories and things we should be covering about the election, please let us know. But thank you so much for allowing us to spend this last day and a half with you. David.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I recognize that we're the only thing that stands between you and libations. So I will be very brief. First of all, Anne-Marie, who could have imagined when we were kid reporters at the Chicago Tribune that we'd be standing here today? And it's such a pleasure to be with you again. And we're so grateful for the partnership with Nieman. Look forward to it again in the future. But you guys have been indispensable partners. I want to also thank our sponsors, the Emerson Collective, the Joyce Foundation, the MacArthur Foundation, and the Robert R. McCormick Foundation, who have generously funded this conference. I just want to pick up on one thing that, actually before I do that, I would be unable to sleep if I didn't thank Christine Hurley and Jen Steinauer from the IOP, who have been extraordinary in the planning and execution of this conference. I'm just so grateful to them and the entire staff of the IOP and Nieman for the hard work on this conference. Mostly I'm grateful to all of you for being here. As Anne-Marie said, we are not a journalism operation, the Institute of Politics. We're all about democracy and trying to encourage young people to lean in to our democracy. And as I look out at you, you are such important elements of that process. Journalism to me is a mission, and it's an essential part of the democratic mission. And our goal here today was to help you arm yourselves with insights and tools that will make you better when you go out there and perform this sacred mission of telling the story of our country and telling the story of this campaign. I'm so encouraged that we're going to see great journalism this year, just through the conversations that I've had with so many of you in the last 24 hours. So thank you so much for being part of this. I really look forward to seeing some of you along the way and to be reading and watching how you tell that story. And to the first point I made, you're all invited to join us on the 10th floor, and I really encourage you to, because it's an absolutely breathtaking view of the city from up on the 10th floor for a networking mixer, is what I'm told. So be sure to don't just drink, network when you're up there. The staff in the hallway will direct you, but thank you for a splendid conference and for your participation.